To hear a speech. Okay. I understand that everybody is tired. I understand that the most important things are well known already. So let me focus on some aspects of our problematics. We are talking about Comuna. To talk about Comuna, there are several ways and several approaches. For the Marxist science, it's necessary to have an approach of the historical, dialectical, materialistic laws in the history. I mean the logic of history of the communities. This is an objective process, law-governed process. This is not something like construction. This is the forms, the concrete historical forms of becoming of humanity, humanity from the level of the natural relations to the level of the primitive human society. In some old Marxist books, you can find the terminology like primitive communism or primitive Comuna. You know, this is very interesting because behind of that there is some type of idealization of the primitive society and something like a very simplified history with three main stages, parts: primitive communism, class societies, and developed communism. That's very popular, used to be very popular in 20th century. Why? Because it was very simple and it was not such necessity to have a scientific approach to what is positive communism. It's just something like coming back of primitive communism. We know that this is not exactly a Marxist approach nowadays. Sometimes in classical works we can find out some forms of that phrases, but this is not the deepest dialectical, methodological approach to the history. There is a real process of developing of society through the transformation, through several stages of transformation of the primitive society's relationships. I mean the several forms of the so-called blood community relations, which are becoming relations of territory through the slavery and through the feudal society in history. And the most important transformation of the primitive society's elements is an issue of development, of becoming of capitalism, capitalist society. But capitalism is not able to sublate dialectically all that historical and prehistorical forms. And in addition to that, capitalism is developing according the laws of unequal development of several parts of societies, especially during the imperialist states, the monopolistic states of capitalism. That means that for the colonies, for the colony system, And for the new colonial system, it's necessary to avoid transforming totally the legacy of primitive society, of any community which have elements of primitive society, slavery, or feudal relationships. Okay, why? Because it is very good to manipulate people using that element. Comrades from Asia, Africa, and Latin America knows very well what that means. Very well. Because the principle divide and rule is one of the most important principles of imperialist policy and political economy. Firstly. We know very well what that means in Europe also. But it's necessary to talk about that. Why? Because to have a dialectical approach to Comuna means to have a deep understanding of concrete historical forms of communities and relations between them in the history. And of course, the main problem is the positive solution of that problem. Because the question is not to have another life of primitive, small societies which are maybe are producing nothing or are producing at a very low level. The goal of the revolution, of the revolutionary movement, is the unification of the humanity in one community. The whole humanity, all human beings have to be united. So, if we want to fight against imperialism in nowadays stage of monopolistic capitalism, of course we have to know very well the concrete history and the national and local modifications and variations of communities. We have to know that and use that in the most creative form. For example, when imperialism is attacking a society, a state like Venezuela now, it's necessary to use in a creative way all the forms of unification at the local level, at the national level, of working class, of peasants, of all the people, to do what? To have self-defense of that society, to have all the people's defense of that society, and Venezuelan people know very well what that means. And in those days, we are here, and in 23, when we first time as platform visited this brilliant country, brilliant people, we had excellent lessons of real making of such revolutionary communities, which are resolving problems, which are resolving real problems, economic, demographic, infrastructure, housing, buildings, energy, telecommunications, all the aspects of the life, education, healthcare, and at the same time they're putting in front of the society goals of the future of socialism. So, Comuna in Paris in 1871, Soviets in first revolution in Russia and its colonies in 1905, and all the other forms of instruments of organizing and developing the subject, the social and political subject of revolution, are very useful lessons for us. And of course, I have to remind that we have to take useful lessons not only from the point of view of the triumph of revolutions, and from the point of view of the counter-revolution and our defense. For example, Comuna in Paris, in one city, was alive for 72 years. The first socialist state, the early socialist state of Soviet Union, was alive for 72 years. The DPRK case of early socialism is alive for 8 decades. The Public Republic of China is alive for 76 years. You can follow a low-governance process of vitality, of developing of vitality of socialist construction, and this is because of the several forms of comunas, of revolutionary theory, practice, and organization of socialist constructions, of socialist revolution. Viva la revolution!